figured I'd talk about this because a lot of people, for the most part, ain't. And they won't. This doesn't involve gossiping. This doesn't involve, I'm sorry, I don't have the microphone hooked up tonight, but I should have did that probably before I started. So I hope you guys can hear me clear. Like I said, I didn't even think about that. Huh? Happens. There were two fires, two separate fires. Um, One happened about 3 or 4 days ago in Philly, and I saw that fire, and there was one thing that pointed it out. But in that fire, there was actually, I believe, 13 people injured and hurt. Then this recently, the day before yesterday, we had another fire in the Bronx. Happened on 181st and Tremont. I know this area very well. And I got friends that live over there. They didn't live in this particular building, but I have friends that live over there, people that I know. And there's some similarities in these fires that I think a lot of people are missing. And especially a lot of people, they call themselves pro whatever or for the people, should be paying attention to. And this might even go for you. One of the things that I saw that was in similarity, and I'll make this short, I'm not going to make this very long, but I had to speak out about it because I know a lot of other people ain't going to speak out about it. And I also want to let everyone know that there are two GoFundMe's down in the description box and also two links to the stories. So go check the stories out. I want you to do that too. I want you to also make sure, even if it's $1, $2, or whatever, donate it to these children. These kids that were killed, black kids that were killed in these fires, is crazy. And I'm going to break both of them down for you, and then I'm going to tell you the similarities. So I hope that you would stay with me and rock with me and listen to this because this has to do with your communities. Not if your direct communities, but extended communities as a people. Let's get this thing right. Everybody's on here talking about this, pro, that stuff. Well, let's talk pro. All right, what you gonna do? Down in Philly, they had a fire. This fire happened in Philly, and approximately, I believe it was 8 children, if I'm not mistaken, were killed. Black children were killed in this fire. No one has talked about this. They had rather put preference on talking about stars once again. No one's talked about this. In that fire, which I'm assuming, and it happened at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:40 to be specific. So these people weren't awake necessarily. Okay, this happened in a public housing project or public housing development. The second and third floor, and the fire happened on the second floor. So there's one, two, three floors in this building. On the first floor, everyone was able to get out. Everybody got out safely. Everybody on the first floor. Then when we fast forward to the second and the third floor, now we got a problem because on the second floor, that's where the actual fire was happening, and it was preventing people on the third floor from actually coming and being able to get out the building. The fire chief and firefighters showed up. Most of them were African American or Latino themselves, respectively, of the area of Philly. And the man, I will never forget the words that came out of his mouth. He said, in 35 years of being a firefighter, this is the worst fire I've ever seen. Do you know what it takes to have to say that as a fireman after 35 years? One thing that stuck out to me, and I want y'all to rock with me and listen to what I'm saying. One thing that stuck out to me was the fact of this. One, they said that the fire alarms had been checked a year prior in this development, which is a public housing development. I want you to understand that and underline that. A public housing development, meaning not necessarily the projects, but a tenement that public housing sees over. And they said a year prior to this, in May of 2020, this place was inspected. It was supposed to be 6 fire alarms that were checked and were deemed safe. And then when we fast forward and we find out after this fire, there was only 4 in there, and those 4 were non-operational. And subsequently, these black children died as a result because they were not able to get out. But wait 1 minute. Not only was that the case, but how is this the case? The building didn't have fire escape. 3-tier building in Philly didn't have a fire escape, meaning that those people that were stuck on the second and third floor, had they had a fire escape and they had working smoke detectors, those people might still be alive, including those children that were killed. 13 people subsequently lost their lives in this fire, and 8 of them were children, black children, one of them including 4 children, all of the same family. Now, let's fast forward. We have a fire that just happened in East Tremont, 181st. My prayers with everybody in that building, everybody of the area, 181st of Tremont. I know this area well. I stomped through that area till to this day. We had a fire that started from what we now know is a space heater. The space heater was in someone's apartment. They were able to get out. There was a set of doors that were supposed to close automatically when you walked out the door. If anybody knows, like most people will know, oxygen aids to fire. So being that this door didn't close as it was supposed to be operational, what happened was the fire spread. The fire spread quicker than usual. And what also happened was people that were running, usually they would think to run down the steps because once again, there was no fire escape for these people in a tenement that is operational by somehow or another by public housing in New York City. Eric Adams, new former mayor in New York City, went and checked it out. He verified this. He verified that those doors were supposed to be operational, and more so another, he's keep quiet on. And I think this because of public interest, that there was no fire escape again. No fire escape. In this fire, 19 people are dead. 19. They're calling it one of the largest fires in New York City history. Do you know what that means to say that? 19 people dead. And as a result, most of these people were immigrants from Africa that lived in the building, specifically from Ghana and I forgot the other place, but they were mostly African immigrants in this building, which the Bronx is made up of a lot of Africans because it's rather cheap. So same goes for Harlem. If you're talking about the East Side, there's a lot of Africans over there, a lot of African people. 19 people were killed in this building, and nobody has said a word in the blackosphere. In fact, the fact that I'm talking about this right now, most people will not come and check out what I'm talking about with this, but I'm going to speak about it anyway. And I don't care if this goes viral, if it makes views or whatever, whatever. I want to know in my heart I talked about it. That's why I'm going live, because I felt a kind of way since whenever about this whole YouTube thing. But this is all in my plot to change up the narrative here about what I'm talking about on here. And I think this is something that needs to be addressed. Now, I want to say this. I went before I went live so I wouldn't make a mistake and put my foot in my ass. And I went and I looked, and I didn't see any of your popular vloggers talking about these fires. I didn't see any of your see, what they don't understand is, and what you don't see the correlation is, many of you that are listening to me, many of you that no matter what city you're in, have family, friends, extended relatives, whatever the case may be, that live in tenements, just like the fire that happened in Philly, just like the fire that happened in the Bronx. And nobody's saying nothing. Nothing. No, nothing. They're not even digging into the intricacies of, well, I have family that lives in one of these public housing tenements, and, or if you want to say city ran tenements ran by NYCHA in New York, and I forgot what the acronym is down there in Philly, but it starts with an S. These are the public housing services, and they're not making it safe for these people that live in these buildings in case of emergency is the point. And so many people don't get that. See, if I had to make a guess, and I say it to myself, first you got to realize that these agencies, they get millions upon billions of dollars. They have gotten billions of dollars for redevelopment under Obama, if many people remember that. They got millions of dollars for redevelopment, and that's national. That's not just individual here, there, this city, that city. Obama enticed a program, if I don't know many of y'all remember it, but I think it was in his first constituency. And I remember specifically, I was in Connecticut still at that time. That's why I went back to New York. And They fixed up the local housing projects based off these grants and this money. And depending on what city you live in the United States, you remember the same thing. Obama did this. Then under COVID-19, there was monies allocated not only in the first, not only in the second, but also in the third package for COVID relief passed by Congress. There was money allocated that states have not used. I'll underline that one more time for you, that states have not used as of yet, even though they are mandated to use certain funds by a certain time and allocate those monies to certain programs, including having fire escapes in buildings with women and some men that are meant to house children. Y'all don't see this? Y'all don't get it? Like, what are you missing? I don't have any kids, but I could think to myself, if it was my cousins or aunts or family members, friends, whoever. And most of them, they don't live in conditions like that either. But I do know people that are friends of mine, people I've known for a while that do live in conditions like this. And if the only thing that separated them from life or death was whether or not they had a fire escape in both instances, in the instance in the Bronx, in the instance in Philly, when y'all sit back and y'all talk so much about this white supremacy and what we got to do and all this talking shit. You see how they care about you? They let your children die from the neglection of not having a fire escape. Did you think in these high, huge tenements, the tenement in the Bronx on 185th and Tremont, I know that building. That building has over 120 units in it. And you're telling me there's no need or no precaution for a fire escape? So what you're not understanding is as these people were trying to escape the higher floors, you understand? And I know a lot of you don't live in New York City or the New York City tri-state area, so you're not familiar, but these buildings are huge. We're talking about 18 and 19 floors, okay? Now, these people are coming from the top down to the bottom. And the only way they got to do that, because the elevators are not operational, they usually go numb when there's operations that actually make the elevators go numb when there's fires and things like that, meaning that the elevators won't work because then there's a secondary precaution at that point because now you might have a fire and get stuck in the elevator. You understand? And depending on the severity of that fire, you may or may not die of smoke inhalation if that fire or that elevator is caught on the floor or whatever the case may be. As an example, say you got in the elevator and the fire is on the 8th floor and you're on the 10th floor and the elevator, because of malfunction, stops on that 8th floor. Well, now all that smoke that's on the 8th floor is now rushing into your elevator. Not only is it rushing into the elevator, but the smoke inhalation is going to make you go into cardiac arrest, or you're going to have some type of smoke inhalation, and it's going to have nowhere to filter out because you're in a box. So usually when there's fires in New York City and most major cities, I'm going to think, usually the elevators go numb, if you don't understand what I mean by that. These people were trapped between the floors because as they were trying to run down those stairs, the effect of that door not closing and and I'm talking about specifically in the Bronx, that fire not being able to escape, but being fueled by oxygen about this door being let open, led to what you call a backdraft. And I knew as soon as I heard it. It's a backdraft. This is when, if someone opened the door, all that fire comes right at them. All that smoke comes right at them. So most of these people didn't burn. They got killed by smoke inhalation. They're saying it's going to be more than just those 19 victims, projectively. More than that. And I wish there were more YouTubers, the ones that want to sit on here all day long. You're talking about, I can make you rich. This cash at me this, and I help you out. I don't do that. None of these guys are talking about these families, these people, or the ramifications behind what happened in those two fires. And both situations, more lives could have been saved if it was just one thing added: a fire escape. Now, I know a lot of y'all like to get on here and gossip about everything. A lot of y'all like to get on here and beef about everything. Hell, earlier today, I was talking about something of my own. But make no mistake about it. If you sit on this mic, if you sit on this YouTube that's owned by Google, if you sit on here and you want to sit every day and gossip and talk about everybody and start problems or whatever, whatever, and think you're so above everybody, which I have a feeling within 2 or 3 years' time, a lot of you that are on YouTube right now that are talking stuff that you're talking, you're going to find sooner or later that everything that you did, all the energy that you put into the gossiping, all the energy that you put into all this other crap that's on YouTube, you're going to realize it wasn't worth nothing. And people are going to remember. People are going to remember. My prayers go out to those people that lost their life both in Philly, also in the Bronx as well. Y'all know that. Shout out to the Bronx every time. I was not born in the Bronx, but my life has revolved around the Bronx 22 to 23 years back in my life, you know, from Mount Vernon to 241st and a couple other places around there, you know. And I don't know how to explain this, but it just really, when I started getting the details, it really just started to bother me. And I know I'm having a moment here, but I mean, just put in perspective if it was your child. Put in perspective, you know, this building in the Bronx was mostly African people, you know. Philly is full of slumlords. So is New York and the Bronx. But this is the problem. These weren't slumlords. These were tenements that were ran and operated by the city. And that's what a lot of people are missing. I was just reading the comments somebody wrote. So we're not going to blame slumlords and we're not going to pass the blame. And I have to be honest with you and I have to be very direct with you. This whole passing blame stuff, oh, it's their fault. It's this person's fault. And I'm not saying the person just wrote that comment either. I'm just saying in general, because that's what a lot of people will do. They will get up in arms and complain about what another group of people didn't do instead of preemptively going in there and saying to themselves, see, there are black firefighters. The chief that was in Philly, he was a black firefighter. You understand? There are black fire chiefs and Latin fire chiefs in New York City. They should be pointing these things out preemptively before they happen. It is one thing to preemptively, and this is the thing that I think a lot of you guys don't understand here, is preemptiveness, being prepared. You understand? Being ready in case situations like this happen. Now, one thing that stuck out to me more than anything, and I'm kind of 50-50 with this. As I mentioned, the fire that happened in the Bronx happened in a mostly Muslim community. I'm more than familiar with Muslims. I used to be with a Muslim for 7 years. So I know Muslim, but she was born and raised Muslim. Um, if many of y'all didn't know that, that's why I laugh when I hear a lot of this pro-black crap. And I know the real versus the fake of it. I remember certain people's houses, like my friend Archie up in Rhode Island. Shout out to Archie and his family. They were born and raised Muslim. You understand what I'm saying? So I've been around that type of environment. My mom used to rock an afro and, you know, have wicker chairs and black power fist and all that stuff. I grew up around that, you know. And I think that's one of the things my dad liked about her as a foreigner. But it pains my heart that the much action that people take every day to put into being voyeurs for the best part, the amount of action people take and the amount of pride they take in bashing their own, none of these guys are taking the preemptive step to put out stories like this and talk about stuff like that. But you'll leave it up to the major news outlets that you say at the same time are against you, aid you and know anything. You will leave it to them to tell the story. Not only will you leave it to them to tell the story, but you will leave it to people that look like them to clean up the mess instead of, in the beginning, preventing the mess. So I'm going to tell you what I mean by this. If you have family that lives in any of these housing tenements or these tenements run by the city, I'm going to tell you what y'all can do. Okay. The first thing you want to do is this. Now listen very carefully to me, and for those who care, really care about quote unquote the culture and all that, listen very well. This is very easy to do. The first thing you want to do is you want to contact the management of the building and ask them three specific questions. One, has the fire system itself been updated? Has it been checked, meaning smoke alarms, etc., 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 recently? And the reason I say this is because it's wintertime. People use space heaters, which in the case of the fire that happened in the Bronx, it was a space heater to blame. Now, there's a lot of preventive measures about the space heaters that I just came aware of, and I'm going to tell you about that in a moment. Now, the first thing you want to do is you want to contact, if you live in any of these type of tenements, make sure that you contact the management. Now, New York City, that would be NYCHA. In Philly, I forgot what exactly the agency is, but those that live in Philly, I'm sure it's easy for you to find. Contact those people and ask them when was the last time that you had someone inspect the fire system, meaning the anti-prevention measurements for the fire system in the building, meaning whether it be bells, whether it be sirens, whether it be carbon monoxide alarms, or whether it be just regular old fire alarms in the building. The second thing, if that doesn't work, is go directly to the fire department itself in that locality. Meaning, if you live in New York City, go to the nearest fire station and voice your concern. Because what I want to tell you is this: a lot of people think that firefighters can't wait to go to a fire. Wrong. Most firefighters never want to see a fire, they never want to see one. Okay. Now, out in the town that I used to live in, um, we had a fiasco because they had never picked a minority in general, black or Latin, to become a fire chief in this town. Never happened before, okay? And I got familiar with a little bit of these things. So the reason I say go to the fire department, because if the fire department goes to those local agencies that run the building, whether it be in NYCHA in New York or whether it be the agency down in Philly, well, they override everything. Because most of the time, when it comes to fire prevention like that, it goes directly to the mayor, which is my third suggestion. Contact the mayor, okay? Take in accord that now in New York City, your mayor is a minority. Now, not to take anything from Mayor de Blasio because he was Latino and he had a black wife and mixed children, but de Blasio, let's keep it above. You were more of a white man than anything, and a perturbed white man at that. That goes without saying that we're saying any racial epithets or anything like that, but go see Mayor Adams. Voice your concerns. Tell them, I live in a tenement and I'm trying to figure out if our smoke alarms work. I'm trying to figure out if we're safe in these places, which leads me to this. In the wintertime, if many of y'all don't understand, in these poor urban neighborhoods, what happens is a lot of times people, well, they lose their heat for the winter or they're trying to save money on heat, especially in these times during COVID-19. A lot of people are not very um, acute on the amount of damage that has been done. 415 million Americans have quit their jobs. Did you hear me? 415 million people have quit their jobs. Jobs are not increasing, they're going away. And most of them are going away because of pure simple fact. And the reason these people are quitting is because they're not getting the allotted hours that they need to. And a lot of them feel, well, why should I even show up? Okay. And can I blame them? If you're making $15 an hour, why would you want to show up for 5 hours worth of work 3 days out of the week? After they take taxes off, you might have made a cool $150. I get it. So a lot of these people that live in these neighborhoods that you believe, and they live in these housing tenements or whatever, whatever, these people work. And a lot of times, a lot of people, these people have to work because the pure simple fact that they don't work, they can't continue to have that residency, whether you know that or not. Those three entities are the ones that you need to talk to. Now, I want to talk about these space heaters. If you have a space heater in your home, and I'm only doing this because it's my due diligence. I never want to see anything like this happen. And if you care anything about the culture, or you care anything like you say you do about the children and all that stuff, then people like Sonetta, who I thought would have jumped on this story. People like Boyce Watkins, who I thought would have jumped on this story, and many others. Y'all so busy gossiping and having debates about, the hematite and the igloos and the excavations of Egyptians and shit like that. Who found King Tut first? Was it the whites, the blacks, or the Mesopotamians? And all that silly shit that y'all do over there. Yeah, I said silly shit because it is silly shit. It adds up to nothing. I don't disrespect y'all. I'm I'm respectfully being disrespectful, you know. But let me say this. You space eaters, one. And y'all gotta because I could just I'm imagining in my head, had I have children, had I had a wife, and I watched this one lady on the news, and y'all see it in the clip. The clips are down at the bottom. Also, a GoFundMe for both Philly and for New York in the Bronx are both there. Okay, so if y'all, screw me on this one. You know what I'm saying? Screw me. Even if you have a couple of dollars, whatever, $5, $2, whatever, donate it to these people. They need it. It is cold here in the Bronx. Tomorrow in the tri-state area. It's supposed to be somewhere around 9 to 10 or something degrees. Okay, and these people, a lot of them don't have anywhere to go. And being that the homeless services and all that stuff down there in New York and the homeless services and all that stuff down there in Philly, they already had their hands tied because see, right now when it's cold, that's when people start rushing in there. You understand? And I can understand a lot of these people because a lot of them are from African backgrounds as far as the people are in the Bronx. Most of those people are from Ghana and other different places and in that building that were affected. And it's sad, man. It's sad because it was so many children that died out of those 19 people in the Bronx, out of those 8 kids that died down there in Philly, and nobody talked about the story. Nobody talked about it. Cynthia G, where were you at? What were many of you at on this story? Captain Tazarek and this many others. Now, one of y'all mentioned this. Y'all talking about relationships. Y'all talking about hatred of black men and we oppressed and all this shit, but you doing nothing. And you were doing nothing last year because you were doing the same behavior last year. The year before that, you were doing the same behavior. And now you continue in 2022 doing the same behavior. And coming from the record industry, I know one thing, which is this. You can't have the same sauce year after year. You got to switch it up. If you can't switch it up, well, that bitch can't swim, she bound to drown. That means you too, fellas. That means you too. If that bitch can't swim, she gonna drown. Shout out to Jim Capo Jones, man, for that lyric. If you have these space heaters, keep them away from your bedding. Your bedding is a night in these things, especially if they're kerosene. Two, if you have one of these space heaters, make sure it's in an area that's clear of all debris. That means paper, that means especially hair grease, anything that's flammable. You have to make sure this area is clear of that. If you have to build a barricade around these kerosene heaters or whatever type of heaters that you have, and many of these heaters nowadays have an auto shut-off freeze. So that leads me to believe the heater she was using was probably a kerosene heater because it's all in the Bronx fire came from one woman. Now, I don't know what the source is on the Philly fire. That's why I can't comment on it. But in the Bronx fire, it was all over a kerosene space heater. Keep these areas clean of these heaters. Now, you may not know this, but I've got information that says that over 300 deaths a year happen specifically between the months of January to almost March of these space heaters tipping over, catching fire, and taking bodies as they go. I know many of y'all won't care about this. This doesn't have to do anything with gossiping. And I'm still trying to contemplate on whether or not I'm gonna do my Jaguar right out here and just disappear. But if I do disappear, I want to make sure that I leave a stain or something to remember before I go. And many of you will see me again. And many of y'all that are friends, you'll always be in touch with me. And I haven't come to the conclusion of that. But what I do know is, as I leave my digital imprint on here, it's not going to be because of no BS. It's not going to be because of gossiping or anything like that. It's going to be to actually attribute and help the people that are Black and Latin that I see every freaking day. My neighborhood that I live in is mostly Latino, Black, Haitian, Jamaican minorities. And we all get along over here. I don't have no problem with my neighbors. I like my neighbors. We speak to each other. We say hello to each other. And I can guarantee if any of my neighbors had their building on, if they had their apartment on fire, what else? I'd be the first one knocking on the door. We don't even have to speak to each other every day, but I'd be the first one knocking on the door. And I do believe they would do the same for me. You have to start being responsible for your own and start being preemptive. Now, when someone like Cynthia G jumps online and she says this about the men and this, that, and other and the third, I'm going to tell you this much because I'm not a punk. Some of the things that Cynthia G says, some of the things, and I'm saying at a 20% margin, may have some validity to them. See, it takes nothing to go around and jump online and be like, yeah, I'm sitting out here, you know what I'm saying? I got it going on. Yo, you hear this music playing, son? You see the bogettes and all that. And the typical hood booger will do this, but not have the gumption to sit and walk up into his same community where sometimes his kids live and be like, yo, you know what? Let me see if these fire escapes is right. Let me see if these fire extinguishers are in here. Let me see if the fire detectors work. And if you haven't never done that, don't worry about it, because I can even say myself, see, this is how honest I am with myself. Up until probably 5 to 6 years ago, I wouldn't have done the same. But once you know, it's then your responsibility to act. You understand? Not to sit around and doing the jig. You know what I mean? Doing the jig. What you doing? I'm doing the jig. Where? On YouTube. YouTube is already oversaturated with people on here talking about absolutely nothing but gossiping. So if y'all want something to gossip about this. Tell your friends, tell bigger vloggers that you know. Tell them, hey, how come you haven't talked about the Philly fire? Just write in the comments section. Do that for me. Write in the comments section. How come you haven't talked about the Philly fire? Some of these vloggers live in the Bronx and didn't even cover the story. I live 30 minutes outside the Bronx. 30 minutes. And I didn't see one, and I follow Bronx bloggers, and I didn't see one comment, do an expose, do a vlog, nothing about that fire that happened. And one thing, if I have to say one thing derogatory about this, I have to say it. I didn't like the fact that the people of that building made an announcement, and this is why I have a problem with. This is the only thing I have a problem with. There was a local masjid that made an announcement that if you are Muslim, and only if you're Muslim, evidently, because they said if you're part of the Muslim community, come down, we'll help you. But everybody in that building wasn't Muslim, Poppy. You understand what I'm saying? So what you should be doing is lifting that hand out to help everybody. Because make no mistake about it, when Africans or many people from different other countries come here, the first thing they do is have their hand out and take everything they can get. My daddy was one of them, so I know. So what I'm telling you guys is, you take an L on that statement, Muslim community. You're here with us. Don't subject yourself to saying, I'm only going to help the Muslim community, because those Black and white and Latin firefighters that came there and risked their life, some of those men were running out of their oxygen, and they ran back in that building and tried to save whoever they could. And up until today, they were still finding bodies. You understand? They didn't say, no, we're not saving anybody. We're saving everybody except for Muslim people. They didn't say that. They risked their lives. I want to reiterate that. Those black, Latin, and white firefighters and police officers who ran up in that building, that some of them were running out of oxygen as they were running into that building in the Bronx on 181st and Tremont, as they were running into that building. They did not 1 second say to themselves, hey, we're saving everybody except for Muslim people. Now, when you start doing that, my African community, when you start doing that and you start validating tragedy versus your current, previous, or whatever religion, well, I got a problem with that. And I don't like that statement. So, to the masjid that made that statement, I think you really, really need to reevaluate what it means to be godly versus what it means to be in a secular religion and following the dogma of a secular religion. You understand? Some things are bigger. And if it was God, Allah, or whoever, whether it was the Quran, the Holy Bible, or the Torah, you should be responsible for the community and the neighborhood that you live in. And everybody should be equally treated and helped, just like you were helped and people in your community were helped when they were running into that building. And all those firefighters, they wasn't African, and the majority of them wasn't Muslim. They reflected the neighborhoods, black, Latino, and white. And they risked their lives. I did not like that statement. I did not like that statement at all from that local masjid that said that. And I think that the Muslim community from that masjid need to take a step back. And a lot of them going to be like, well, who are you to say that? I was with a Muslim woman for 7 years. Born, raised Muslim. She was dating me and I wasn't a Muslim. And it caused a little strife in her family because of that, because I wasn't Muslim. I've dated a woman that was Israeli from Afula, Israel. Her name is Adi David. She lived with me for a while. She looked like Mary Ben Ari, the girl that used to play the violin or whatever. Beautiful. So was my ex. She's beautiful too. I never dated ugly girls, I will say that. And I've always been in relationships. A lot of people get this contention of me of like, and I'll just say this real quick, and I'll go on back to what I was saying. A lot of people, I think they get the contention of me because I never talk about relationships or anything like that or whatever. I was with a woman for 7 years that was Muslim. Before that, I was with another woman that was Italian. Before her, I was with another woman, which I just mentioned, D. David. Each one of these women I was with for a while. I wasn't with these women just like for 5 minutes and then I just went on about my business. These women lived with me. They moved in with me. I wasn't no trash bag warrior, even though I have slang some D once or twice back in my early 20s to have somewhere to stay for a night or two. Yes, I did. But as I became a man, and I say anywhere between, and let's not even get this messed up. I've had my own place since I was 17 years old. I've only had 4 addresses in my whole adult life. And if you're wondering how old I am, I'm in my early 40s. You understand what I'm saying? And I've never, ever, 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 even when I just had my last experience with going through a little homeless shit and all that stuff or whatever, I had girls that were right here on my lives that were telling me, yo, daddy, you can come stay with me. You come there. And I said, I need my own. The last location I was at, I was there for 10 years. The place I was at before then, I was there for 8.5. Okay? I have a good rental history. I have good credit. That's why I was able to get into the place that I'm in right now. So I say this, all this bickering between the genders and all that, it serves you no good because men and women were affected. I listened to a man say his sister lost 3 of his kids in that Bronx fire, and they're immigrants. And I know the immigrant plight. 3 of her kids. Another woman said she lost 2 of her kids and was just sobbing outside the building. In Philly, I saw the same thing. A woman literally passed out as she pulled up because she had lost her entire family. These are people that look like you and I. And the best thing that you guys have to offer is a daily diatribe on each one of your individual YouTube pages is talking about who Kim Kardashian is dating, who so-and-so is sleeping with on Love and Hip Hop or whatever. And I will continue to make that statement over and over and over and over again. Because just like in the epic words, Kevin Hart, you're going to learn today. See, the problem is, and I understand it now, a lot of people that are older than me didn't take 5 minutes to sit down to y'all and tell y'all the breaks. And there's also another thing that's here that a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of these kids that you see coming up today, well, a lot of the daddies, and including their mamas, and including their aunties and their uncles and people that could have put something and invested something in them at the time. Many of these people were going through drug abuse. Many of these people were locked up in prisons. Many of these people were absentee, voluntarily and involuntarily. I know situations where I've known men that don't even know they have a child, and the woman will elect to raise that child by herself and never let that man know. And the only thing when somebody question that man, and I've seen it, the only thing that she will tell people when people question her about where the child's father is they will put out some derogatory statement out their mouth verbally about where that child's father is. So these kids have grown up, and I mean, you throw the internet on top of it. They have like narcissism. They have grown up in an environment where they know no empathy because none was shown to them. So they ditch out the same thing that they were raised on. This is why you are not seeing any young YouTubers or older YouTubers or middle-range YouTubers or some of your biggest black YouTubers talking about stories like this. So it's up to y'all now to change the narrative here on YouTube, because little do y'all believe it or not, this YouTube algorithm, let me tell y'all something. I honestly and truthfully believe this based on other people that I check out. People that talk about things like I'm talking about right now, they don't get a lot of views. When I talk about something that, or I throw up something that's crazy out there or gossiping or whatever, don't y'all notice that'll get thousands of views? But when I talk about a subject like this, it only gets a couple of hundred. And that's okay, because I'm betting on out of those couple hundred views, there's going to be one person that's listening to it. And he's going to be like, yo, you know what? He got a point. He got a point. He got a point. Now, what can I do since I do all this talking? Since I do all this, guys, when it's a tragedy to happen, you know, when somebody get killed, like Mike Brown, Philando Castile, after the tragedy has happened, I want to complain to the streets. I want to march. I want to do all that, right? Right. I get it. Yeah, I know. But nobody ever taught y'all how to preemptively be prepared for that. Do you know that probably, I say it was probably 5 months ago for my longtime listeners, I told y'all at that time about the food shortages. I even told y'all and gave y'all a guess of when it was going to happen. And was I right? My long-term listeners, if y'all know that video I did two of them. There was one particular one I did that was over 2.5 hours long, so it won't be hard to find. And I talked about this and I broke it down and I told y'all why there was going to be food shortages. I went into Target tonight after I left out here. I had to go out and mail a letter or whatever. That's why I ended my live so early, because I had to scoot down to the post office to mail something off. And I went to Target after that. And when I went to Target, I noticed when I went into Target, there were now letters and I don't want to say letters, but signs that people had handwritten and said, due to food shortages, we are out of this, that, and other, and the third, or whatever. And we don't know when we might receive it again. This was in the store. I'm going to take pictures of it tomorrow. So I can throw it up and show you guys. Or if you have not seen it your own self, I told you about this. I'm not talking about I predicted something or whatever. I told y'all what was coming because a set of obstacles only led up to that. And in my opinion, I think they're doing it on purpose. I think they're doing it on purpose to drive up inflation, because a lot of these products are sitting right now on the docks in California in shipping containers. The same materials I'm using or want to use to build homes, which I'm going to get that done one way or another, with or without, quote unquote, the community. And I want everybody to know, once I start getting those homes built, I will not, and now you have my promise, because these homes are for y'all, black and brown folks. Once I start getting my first sets of properties built, I guarantee you, based on my experience on here, that will no way affect the way that I treat any of y'all. Because see, that's the problem right there. You don't have the gall and the balls to go at white folks like that, majority of you, because you're scared. So you put all your frustrations and everything else on your own people. And therefore, since you haven't put those frustrations on other people, you now have a vision of how your folks are. And if you ask me, the majority of you hate each other. You know, we always hear that term, and I heard Boyce Walker say that term before. Oh, you know, a lot of these guys, they don't want to date black women because they hate themselves. No, a lot of these motherfuckers want to kill anybody that looks just like them because they hate themselves. And hating yourself, that has nothing to do with hating your skin color. No, the majority of the time, because I've had to catch myself a couple of times, because most of the people in your day to start crap with you, well, they either black or brown. It's hard to say. Hey, official CC, how you doing? Philly is full of slumlords. Yeah, I heard that one before. Yeah, the thing is, both of these, and I'll reiterate it again, both of these facilities, both of these apartment buildings, both in the Bronx and Philly, were under agencies of public housing. That's the problem. These weren't slumlords. If there's a slumlord, it was NYCHA and this other one. So what I'm saying is, if you saw this fire, now, and let me emphasize this too, maybe this will help. Both of these structures were old. See, Philly, I know Philly, my granddaddy from Philly, my mother's father. You understand? Most of these places that are in Philly are row houses, depending on where you're at. Germantown, other spots, or whatever, they're row houses. You go to Brooklyn, it's the same thing, row houses. You go to the Bronx, it's a little bit different, but it's pretty much the same. Everything is right next to each other. But the thing that separates all of them is you have these high tenements in between. See, most of the Bronx, majority of it, is almost like a big suburb that's urban. If you really want to be, and I don't mean suburb meaning like, I mean like Queens and the Bronx, both on the edge of New York, both respectfully. They're more like huge ass suburbs, but urban suburbs, if that makes any sense. So one of the problems is they have these row houses, yeah, that are right next to each other, but in between all of them, you have these huge buildings in between. And when I say this, I mean like most of the high buildings, high end buildings and tall buildings in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Philly, or whatever are segregated to public housing. Okay. This is a problem of those agencies. And this is why I'm telling you. And if you didn't hear me, I will tell you once again. You need to, especially right now, and I'm talking about immediately. Don't wait a week, don't wait 2 weeks, don't wait 3 weeks, because you know way how have the way to walk through each person's individual apartment and see what they're holding. Meaning you don't know if they have a space heater, you don't know if they have a problem with their electricity, you don't know if they have a problem with one of the things that they have or whatever the case may be. What you need to do is, one, go talk to the agencies that oversee your developments. Meaning if it's NYCHA, you need to make an attempt to go to NYCHA. Many of y'all know as well as I know, and I know how New York rolls, that most of you are not going to get in touch with someone from NYCHA or whatever. But what you need is documentation that you attempted to do so. Get me? That doesn't work. Don't worry about it. Because the next thing you need to do is get you, and don't just go by yourself, and make sure that you record it. Get you, and if at minimum 2 to 3 people, and go to the fire station. Yes, the fire station. I know it sounds crazy. Go to the fire station and request to talk to the fire chief. This is their job, to prevent fires. Firefighters do not, and I will reiterate, do not like putting out fires. Ask any, if you're in your day tomorrow, ask a firefighter. Be like, hey, do you enjoy putting out fires? I guarantee you he'll say, if I can prevent them, that's my job, to prevent fires. Their job is not to put out fires, it's to prevent fires. They are preventive measurement. Just like the police, as much as I hate to say it, they are preventive measurement, the good ones anyway. They are preventive measurement. They're not there to class things once they have happened. They are preventive measures. So go to your fire station and talk to the fire chief and say to him this: sir, can you tell me when the last time you have on record that our fire alarms were checked? Because in the situation of both Philly and the situation that's seeming also of the Bronx, those fire alarms and fire preventive tools were not checked accordingly. I will reiterate to you again. In 2020, they said in Philly that there were 6 fire alarms that were operational. When they got there, they found 4. 4. That means somebody added on 2 to whoever did the fucking inspection. Excuse my French. But whoever did the inspection added on that they had two, and maybe they had intentions of replacing the two. Maybe there was a work order that was put out and we just don't know about it. It could be. It could be. Maybe there was a work order put out and it was never fulfilled. Let's say that. Let's get the benefit of the doubt. I still want you to go to the fire department. Once you go to the fire department and you get the response you get, if that doesn't work, now it's time to go to the mayor's office. Now, many of y'all know when I was going through my little dilemma, I called the governor's office 5 times. They know me very well. Very well. Shout out to Governor Lamont in your office. I appreciate you for expediting my so you can do this. You guys can do this, but you have to work together to do it. And that's why I'm saying the people that are distractions, and I hate to call people out, but people that are distractions, like the vloggers that are sitting on here every day talking about stars or with these little animated voices. Hey, yo, you won't believe what happened, yo. They found young Dolph's murderers. Da, da, da. The same emphasis in RP to young Dolph and any other rapper that lost his life. That's not what I'm saying. But the same emphasis they put on trying to find who is the target of whoever did this. I need that same energy y'all putting into that to put it into this. Not saying that one is less than the other, but I'm saying put that same energy and that Scooby-Doo mentality and the mystery van into this. Because if it happened in Philly, if it happened in the Bronx, and a lot of y'all to be online fronting that really live in public housing or deplorable situations of yourself, many of these people don't even know if their fire extinguishers work, if their fire alarms work, or anything else. Night official CC, bless up. So, make sure that you get in touch with those 3 people I talked about. Your agency who you rent from, talk to the fire department, and talk it ultimately to your mayor or your either alderman, depending on where you live at, local constituent or representative. In New York, we have borough representatives all over. So depending on where you're at and what borough you have, your borough representative, whatever, talk to them and say, I need my building checked out because I got kids in here. Do you not understand? This is the whole antithesis of public housing. Children. So fuck you. Fuck if you don't like me or you don't like what I'm talking about. Do it for your kids. That's what I'm trying to convey to you. And it's a damn shame, I'm sorry for cursing, but it's a damn shame that Sonetta, Captain Tazarak, or any of these other bloggers that claim they for the people are not talking about this in more detail other than a victimhood model. No, screw the victimhood model. The victimhood model is the worst thing that came out of all this protesting and all this shit. You turn from strong people into professional victims. And it's now time to start being preventive. It is 2022. It is not 1992. It is not 1982 or 72. You guys are in a whole totally different year, and you're still carrying on and carrying over the same discussions, the same premises, and the same lectures, and the same talk, and the same victimhood that you were in 2020 and 2021. Look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself this question. Are you going to carry it into 23, 24, 25? Well, after that, you're halfway done with a decade. That means you're headed into 2030 and 10 years senior where you're at right now, talking about the same exact narrative. RIP to all those children that lost their lives. RIP both to the families of those immigrants in the Bronx, in Philly, and their extended families. And I wish them nothing but recovery and the best. This is a tragedy. The nation is talking about it, but your local blogger isn't, because they feel that their views are more important and their donations are more important than, quote unquote, talking about the same people they claim to represent. And if you can prove me different, guys, I may or may not be back tonight, but I want you to think about this and remember what I said, and hopefully you watch this fully through. All the links to the stories are in the description box. Also, there's a GoFundMe for the Philly victims and a GoFundMe for the Bronx victims. Please donate to them and contribute and help these people. These people have lost their children. These people have lost everything they had, and it's dead cold outside. And from somebody that was homeless before and has slept on trains and everything else, yeah, y'all have a good night.